As a business owner, you have limited time and resources. I'm going to tell you why you should direct most of those at maximizing member retention inside of your CrossFit affiliate. My name is Jason Fernandez, aka Fern, co-founder of Best Hour of Their Day podcast, where we have spent more times recording podcasts than anybody in the CrossFit space, recording more than 700 podcasts and working with more than 1,000 affiliate owners all over the world. Our whole goal is to give you guys as much value as humanly possible. If you guys need help, always feel free to reach out to us, set up a call, and we can walk you through what that would look like. But in this video, we are going to talk about retention. And fundamentally, this is what separates us from virtually everybody else in this space. Is retention is the name of the game. That is what we hang our hat on with regard to the thing that we focus on and what we prioritize and what we teach people to do inside of running their business, because it's the linchpin of almost every other metric or every other outcome that you would want inside of your CrossFit affiliate. So I'm going to walk you through what that would look like. I'm going to walk you through different frameworks, different models, and a ton of different stuff to help you look at retention through a new lens and ultimately help you grow a better box. So a lot of what we're going to talk about in this video, and remember, the purpose of these videos is to go deep. We're going to talk about one subject specifically, and we're going to go as deep as we possibly can to really peel back the onion on all the different things attached to a particular topic. And in this video, it's going to be talking about retention. So a lot of this is going to be framed around this idea of the 4 S's. And I had the good fortune of sitting in with a brilliant professor at Harvard Business School named Professor Das. And this is his framework. And it's based on the 4 S's. So select, serve, satisfy, and survive. Now, in a previous video, we talked a lot about a select. So in this video, we're going to be talking primarily about serve and satisfy. And then if you're looking at survive and you're thinking like, hey, that sounds a little bit bleak, but think about like survive and thrive, right? Because the first thing we have to do in any given business is we do have to survive to fight another day. And that's just the nature of being an entrepreneur. Like winning is continuing to play the game tomorrow. So I don't think it's inappropriate. I think it's all about how you're framing, about how you look at it, and looking at this through, a very pragmatic lens, and looking at this through something that would really signify how the things actually work. And the reality is, like, if you've been doing this long enough, like, you know that if you can survive longer than everybody else, you've got a better chance at winning. So we're going to be looking at this through the frame of the 4 S's, and primarily we're going to be looking at serve and satisfy. All right, so to kick this off, we're going to revisit something I've talked about in a previous video, which is the importance of retention by the numbers. And when you really unpack any given business, particularly in the service-based businesses, what you find is that retention is the linchpin. And we'll talk about our definition of retention, but I want to dive right into the numbers so that we can kind of set the framework for this. And if you've been in the CrossFit space or trying to learn a little bit more about business, some of these acronyms will make sense to you. But when we talk about LEG, that's length of engagement, or how long somebody would stay with you. Lifetime value is what is the value financially of that person over the course of their lifetime engagement with you. Lifetime gross profit, that is what is the profit that I have based on my engagement with this person. ACV, average client value, that means on average, what is this person worth on a rolling monthly basis? And then CAC, which is cost of acquisition. How much does it cost me to acquire a client? Now, what's important about these is how does retention impact all of these metrics? Now, there are more, but these are kind of what I would describe as like the big 5 if you're looking at any given business. And what we look at is inside of LEG, LTV, and lifetime gross profit, inherently inside of that equation, retention is baked into that cake. So we're looking at like retention has a direct impact on these numbers. So it's directly correlated into those numbers. If you have poor retention, all of these numbers are low or really, really bad. Now, the bottom 2, average client value and CAC, these are going to be indirect, meaning there's not a direct correlation, meaning that's not causation. Up here, those are causation or causative. Down here, these are correlative. So when we look at indirect impact, average client value and cost of acquisition, if I have really, really satisfied customers and I have great retention, we can make some strong assumptions around your average client value and around your cost of acquisition. Meaning, if somebody's really happy, they're willing to pay more money. And if somebody's really, really happy, they're really, really likely to refer somebody. And if I have referrals, that brings down my cost of acquisition tremendously. I don't have to go to outside channels and play the game of looking at trying to run ads and do some of those other things that increase my risk inside the business. And again, the whole name of the game inside of a business is to decrease risk. And if I know where risk is going to present itself, I can combat that with plans and ideas and frameworks in order to avoid as much risk as humanly possible. Because again, your business has risk in it just by the very nature of existing, and I don't want to add any more to that equation. Now, first and foremost, let's do something that I've learned being on seminar staff for years, and something that Coach Glassman is really big on over the years and continues to be, which is defining our terms. So let's define this idea of retention. And our definition of retention is this, is a series of things done consistently and consistently well that would lend the consumer to get what they value most. Okay. And it's a really important concept to understand, right? And it's important to understand that like it can't just be a one-time thing. It's got to be done consistently and consistently well, and it needs to be something that they value. And you see that there's 3 different ways that you can miss the mark on this definition of retention. But fundamentally, let's make it a little bit simpler. And we look at retention, we have to figure out what it is that they value, and then we have to give it to them, right? So again, I've talked about this before, but like figure out what they want and then give it to them. If you do that, you have the opportunity to create happy clients. And fundamentally, what we're dancing around here is this idea of customer satisfaction. Okay. And customer satisfaction really is at the heart of this idea of retention, right? Understanding like what it is that people want and then delivering that on a consistent basis. When you do that well, it makes absolutely everything else in your business easier, right? It makes cost of acquisition easier. It makes running your daily operations easier. And it just makes your life better because there is nothing worse than dealing with shitty clients, right? We've all been there. We've all had somebody that we would just love to kick out of our gym, but we can do without all of that. And we walk through things like deselection versus selection. We talked about building a good sales process. We talked about having a good strategy in some of the other videos, but at the heart of all of that, at the heart of this whole thing and doing it really, really well, right? The coach is at the center of that, but understanding retention is the metric that if you want to succeed in this game, you must learn to drive that metric, but you also need to understand what it is and what it means. Okay, so to highlight the point of all of this is there's a 2-step process in ultimately making your customers happy and therefore retaining them over time. It's a really complicated process. It's 2 full steps. It looks like this. 1, again, find out what they want. Step 2, which a lot of people just skip over, is give it to them, right? Find out what they want and then give it to them. And this is something that we as gym owners and a lot of businesses just skip right over, which is not ever just asking the client what it is they want and then working backwards to figure out how you can deliver that to them in the best way humanly possible. We just went through this whole process inside of Best Hour and Affiliate U because we work with hundreds and hundreds of gym owners at any given time. Worked with over 1,000 over the past 4 years. And we were looking at how we were facilitating Affiliate University because it's a combination of, we got small group calls, large group calls, there's course content, there's email communication, there's a bunch of different stuff. And we were looking at, hey, we're doing a lot of stuff. But the reality is like we came up with most of those things in a vacuum. So we reverse engineer it and we just started going out to the clients and saying, hey, of all the things that we do, what do you like the most? Like what is the thing you absolutely under no circumstances could do without? And then what are the things you're like, it's cool, but like if you took that away, it really wouldn't be that big of a deal for us. And shockingly, we came up with some answers that we thought we would get, and we came up with some answers that we were absolutely shocked to get. And this helps us deliver better because inside of an affiliate, inside of any given business, again, you have a limited amount of time, money, and resources. An allocation of that time, that money, and those resources to the wrong thing can be the death of your business. So why kind of design all of this stuff in the dark or walking around with a blindfold on, kind of guessing what people want? Instead, we can just ask them. And this is a really, really important process. Now, when you go through this process, a little kind of pro tip here is like, don't just send out a survey. You're going to want to have a lot of conversations with people, and you can follow that up with a survey. But you're probably going to be shocked with what you find. Okay. Now, inside of that whole process, what we're kind of outlining here is this idea of something called an attribute map. What I'm going to outline here inside of this attribute map is like, what is the purpose of the attribute map? The attribute map is designed so that you can match what you want to be the best at with what your clients value the most. And that is the secret sauce with regard to building an attribute map. So I've kind of made one here, and we're going to walk through like how you would go about designing an attribute map and then what you would do with the information, right? So if you just have this information, don't do anything with it, obviously you can see why that would not be a great move. So if I look at this, the way you're going to set this up is on the x-axis, you're going to have 1 to 5, meaning like 1 being we're not really good at it, 5 being like we're the best in the world at it. And on the y-axis, what we're looking at is top to bottom, the things that our clients value the most. So let's just say that our clients value coaching, and then after that, it's nutrition services. Then they love events. Then they love the fact that we have a bunch of different programs. We've got masters, we've got yoga, we've got Pilates, we've got whatever, and then they value PT. But this is the hierarchy, meaning from most important to them to least important to them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to plot these on this attribute map. So let's just say that I'm looking at coaching, and at coaching, hey, we consider ourselves pretty strong at coaching. So we're going to be something around a 4, maybe a 4.5. We move down to nutrition. our clients really value it, but it's not something that's kind of our bread and butter. We have a limited number of people in nutrition, right? So maybe we're like a 1.25. Maybe events, like we kind of like events, or people love events, but like, we could be a little bit better. Let's call it a 3. Now, programs, we run a ton of programs. Like we've got programs for everybody, and we think we're really good. We're constantly running workshops and all that kind of stuff, and we say that we're a 5 at programs. And then lastly, PT, and this is something that we do a little bit of PT here and there, but like our clients don't really value it that much. Let's call it a 2. So when we plot this on this graph, here's what this ends up looking like. I've got this attribute map, and it goes from one dot to the next, and this is what we end up having. And again, having conversations with tons of business owners that run everything from 9 to 10 figure businesses to professors that analyze this stuff all the time, what they will tell you is that 90% of businesses have attribute maps that look just like this. And what I will tell you right out of the gate is if this is what your attribute map looks like, this is a recipe for a failing business. If you have things scattered all over the place, then you're not setting up your business and your services correctly, and you're going to be spending a ton of time and energy on resources that things that people don't care about. So now I'm going to outline the first mistake that people make is, and let's just say that we look at this and we say, well, hey, listen, we're just going to be the best at everything. And I want to have 5s all the way across the board. We're going to be the best at coaching, nutrition, events, programs, and PT. And this is what it's going to look like. And I'll be the first person to tell you, like, that's the first conclusion that I came to. Being a CrossFitter, we're going to be generalists. We're going to be good at everything. And the reality is, when it comes to business, this is also a failing plan. You're not going to be everything to everybody. So you have to make a conscious decision about what you are going to do with your products and services. The thing that you have to figure out is, what do they value most and what do they value least? The things they value least, it's okay to be bad at those things because they don't care about them. So if you're going to design an attribute map correctly, then what I need to do is say, okay, cool. Well, my athletes, they value nutrition, coaching, and events above all things else. Programs in PT, we're really good at them, but at the end of the day, our clients don't really value them. So we're going to put those all the way over here. Boom. And in a properly designed attribute map, you would have a hard turn over here, and this is what your attribute map would look like. And what this is saying is that if you want to be the best in the world at something, you have to be willing to be the worst in the world at something. Let's just say, this is what my clients value the most. It doesn't matter if you're good at these things right now. If they don't care about them, then we shouldn't spend any more time on them. Put them over here. Again, this also goes back to what we talked about for selection and deselection. This is the way that I can really clear up a messaging about what our value proposition is inside of our business. It also gives you free reign to be bad at things, right? If you know that your clients only care about these things and you've told them outright and overtly, be like, this is not stuff that we do. We're never going to be good at these things. They don't expect you to be good at them because you told them you're putting all your time and money and all your resources into these things that they value most. And again, if you can make the things that you're best at match the things that they value most, that's ideal. But in a lot of instances, we just find things that we like to do that we've gotten good at that our client don't actually value that much. And again, we have this discrepancy between value created and value captured. And that's a really bad business proposition because it just doesn't work out financially. So when you're trying to map out, hey, what should we do? This is a really good exercise to help you work through that process. And again, we just went through it. You're going to find out a lot of things that you didn't know, but it is really, really eye-opening to work through this process and figure out what that is. And again, this goes back into your overarching strategy about winning the game of making your clients as happy as possible. And it is fundamentally knowing what they want so that you can deliver that to them on a systematic basis. If you want a real world example of this, what do you think about when I say Dennis Rodman? And first, you probably like Carmen Electra and green hair, but that's not what I'm talking about. I want you to think about this in the context of basketball. What is Dennis Rodman known for? If you said rebounding, that is the absolute right answer. Dennis Rodman was one of the best, if not the best rebounder in all of NBA history. That's what he's known for. That's why the Chicago Bulls brought him in. That's why the San Antonio Spurs brought him in after that. They brought him in not because he wanted to score a bunch of points, not because he was a great point guard. They brought him in to rebound. Okay. He also happened to be a pretty good defender, but quite frankly, they could have done without that and just said, go rebound the ball. And that's a perfect example of putting all of your eggs in one basket. And that's what Dennis Rodman did. He was like, I'm not going to be good at anything other than rebounding because I will always have a place and people will always value that because they needed that inside of their team in whatever team it is in the NBA. Everybody wants somebody that can rebound. It adds a tremendous amount of value to the team, but he executed that on a personal level. You just want to think through that from a standpoint of like how you operate your business. I want to be the best at one, maybe two things. Everything else is going to be a waste of time over the long haul, right? I want to find out what they value most, and then I want to give them that. So if I'm thinking about it through that lens, I think another interesting concept really helps to frame this out, which is Jeff Bezos inside of Amazon. They have what they call the empty chair in all meetings that they have, right? So they have the empty chair theory, which is in any meeting they always have an empty chair. And if you're thinking about who that chair is for or what it represents the customer. So when they're having a meeting, they're thinking that the customer is in the room and they're thinking about, does the customer value this, or are they going to value it in a high regard sometime in the near future? And this helps to guide every decision that they make. Because if you've ever heard Jeff Bezos speak, what you will find is that he talks endlessly about being customer obsessed. And if you've not worked through something like an attribute map, if you've not asked around like what it is that they value most, this probably means that you're not directly customer obsessed. We need to figure out what it is that they want. We need to figure out what their pain points are. And this is what we spend all of our time inside of Best Hour, inside of Affiliate U, trying to figure out like, what do they need? What do they want? What are they struggling with? And the beauty of it is I still own my affiliate. So a lot of those things, if you're having a pain point, I'm having the same pain point, right? So we go and we think about this through the empty chair concept, and we pair that with the attribute map so that we can be as efficient as possible with our resources when we deploy them. Okay, now with all of that said, let's dive into this, which I think is the most important concept to follow through here with is, if I asked you this question and I said, what is your number one retention tool? I'd get a mixed bunch of answers here. And what I will tell you is that what we find time and time again, which is when people leave a CrossFit affiliate, it is for largely one reason, okay? Outside of, so-and-so slept with somebody else, or they got robbed or whatever, or they stole something out of the locker room. You take out all the wacky shit that happens in affiliate owners, people really just leave for one thing. And if we go back to the 50-50 model, it really highlights the importance of this, okay? So again, you guys have probably seen this before, but I will remind you endlessly because it's really important, right? So over here on the left side, I've got service, I've got ops, and then I've got marketing. Okay, and over here, nope, that's wrong. I've got sales, and over here I've got service, right? So understanding that your number one retention tool is this 50% of the pie, okay? What happens between 0 and 60 when somebody walks in your affiliate and shows up for class every day is your number one retention tool. This is no different than a restaurant. If a restaurant has terrible food, they're not going to stay in business, right? Understanding that as a restaurant, their number one retention tool is making sure that the food tastes good, because it's really hard to put good service or good systems around food that just doesn't taste very good. So understanding how you manage this is arguably the most important thing inside of the walls of the affiliate, and it's why we harp on it so much. When we work with affiliates that are struggling, it is largely due to really, really poorly delivered service. And that's why we spend so much time. That's why we bring the best of the best inside of Affiliate University, Flow Masters Red Shirts for 10, 15 years that are really good at this. They have 10,000 hours, and we transfer that information to the coach and to the staff because we know that having great coaches on the floor is going to keep people around for a really, really long time, and it makes up for being bad at a lot of other stuff. Now, you still need to be really, really good at the sales, the operations, and marketing, because those things will help you leverage the service. Okay, but understanding like the big thing that you have to get right is the service, and that's what happens between 0 and 60 in your classes. Okay, so in this scenario, we're going to use something called the service excellence model, and it's a simple block diagram here. So I've got one block here, one block there. This one represents the provider, and this one represents the person being provided the service to. And what we have to understand is that the quality of the service provider directly impacts the quality of the service provided, okay? And what we have to understand is this fundamentally controls this. If you do not control the quality of the service provided, you fundamentally cannot control the quality of the service provided. And this, again, reiterates the importance of putting all of your time and energy into making sure that you create great coaches that create great experience and have maximum impact on your clients. And this is a really good model, very, very simple to understand. This one absolutely dictates this one. If you have subpar coaches, you're going to have a subpar service delivered to them. And understanding the relationship between those two. And we're going to talk more and more about how you invest your time and energy and resources into this one to get the outcome that you want over there. That's a different video. I just wanted to give you this model right now because I think it really highlights the importance of the service. It just lets you know that you're not going to be able to provide a high value service without high value service providers. Just to give you guys a little nugget, we'll dive into this a little bit deeper in a video about creating and managing great teams. But when we're talking about the service provider, the most highly functional units, the most highly functional organizations in the world have two things. They have an official performance evaluation, and they have what's called a high frequency of drive-by feedback. So when you're thinking about how you interact with your team as the service providers to make sure that your clients are happy, this is a really, really important concept to understand. I need to have some sort of objective measuring stick that I'm going to give to them so that they know where they stand inside of the service delivery. And then what you also have to have on top of that is really, really just high frequency of informal conversations about, hey, let's try to do this a little bit differently. That can be tweaked a little bit more. Hey, remember when you did this, try it this way. And those conversations should just be happening all the time inside of the affiliate. So if you're trying to figure out how do I start moving down that path, just take those two pieces of information. Yes, I need to have some sort of official performance evaluation, but that is less important than the high frequency of drive-by feedback, right? Meaning we're just constantly iterating on what it is that we're doing over and over and over. All right, guys, if you like this content, please subscribe to the podcast, but understand we work with affiliates. If you are interested in building your business, understanding strategy, building a better community, and building better coaches and careers for them, hit the link somewhere around this video, and we'd love to have a call with you. I get asked all the time, what gym software should a gym owner use? And the short answer is, I don't care. What I care about is the companies like PushPress design software that helps gym owners run better businesses. So if you're working with a software company, you're not happy, and you don't know what to do with the information that software gives you every single day, check out PushPress. They've got built-in systems like the 180-day journey that we helped them build inside of PushPress Grow that'll help you interact with your clients at a better clip in order to improve your retention. So if that's something you're interested, reach out to those guys at PushPress and help you run a better box today. Now, inside of that, what we're going to start looking at is, so I know how we're going to serve, right? I know that we really need to get our coaches dialed in, but then how do I continue to satisfy over time? And this is an interesting concept about knowing where people fall inside of kind of the entire buyer's journey. And we're going to outline that here. Okay, so what we're going to outline is there's a series of places that any customer in any business will fall. It just depends on where they're at inside of that entire cycle. And really what we're outlining here is knowing where somebody's at so that I can interact with them appropriately. An example would be if my wife is pissed off at me, but I'm interacting with her like she's not pissed off at me, this is only going to make matters worse. If I understand that she's angry, then I need to act appropriately based on how angry she is so that we can get to some sort of resolution. And you would be shocked how many times we as business owners don't know where people fall. And when we interact with people inappropriately because we don't recognize where they fall in that cycle, eventually what happens is they either don't buy or they leave when they were buying. So going back to the 8 ways to grow your business, if I'm not aware how to get somebody to keep buying because I'm interacting with them inappropriately based on where they're at in the buyer cycle, they're going to leave eventually. So we're going to outline what those 5 categories look like and how you should interact with each one of them. So at the bottom, what we're looking at is this is the cynic. Right? So this is somebody largely is just irrational, somebody who is just a naysayer, and there's really not a ton you're going to do with that right now. We're going to outline how would I start to kind of interact with this person. Spoiler alert, it's not going to be you that's going to interact with them, but this is not somebody you're going to spend a ton of time and effort on the outset. If I go one up from there, then I've got what we call the skeptic, right? And the skeptic is somebody that is open to influence, right? They have reservations about joining a CrossFit gym, but they're open to having a conversation about it, or they're willing to maybe go with their friend to bring a friend week in that scenario. Okay. Above that is the prospect. Okay. Now, what's interesting about the prospect is the prospect typically has a short list, meaning they are kind of vying between different gyms and they're looking at what do they have versus what do they have, how close is that one to my work versus how close this one is to my home. These are all things that they're looking at, right? So they've got a short list and they're doing the statistical analysis on which one of these might be their best opportunity. Above that, we have the buyer. Okay, the buyer has made the decision. Okay, they're buying from somebody and they're probably already buying. Now, what's interesting about the buyer is that most people that fill out a form on your website are the buyer, okay? most people. Okay. And this is what's interesting, and this is what fools most affiliate owners into thinking that they're good at sales. Because I mentioned in another video of most affiliate owners say, hey, as long as somebody sits down in front of me, they're going to buy. Again, it's not because they were good at sales. It's because that person was already a buyer before they walked into the building. Your job is just not to fuck up the sale. Okay. So if we understand that, then we can interact with them a little bit differently. Now, at the top of this, we have the ambassador. And this is why we teach people how to set up an ambassador program inside of the affiliate. And these are your people that wear all your gear. These are the people that bring their friends. These are people that sing your praises. They post on social media. They gave you 85 Google reviews. Those are the people that if you could replicate them 100 times over, you would be the happiest affiliate owner of all time. Okay. So now, if we understand that these are the 5 stages of any given buyer in any given business, but we're going to talk specifically about a CrossFit affiliate. Now we have to understand, how do we interact with people at these different stages, okay? Now, there's 2 components that apply to all of these, okay? The first component is this, right? Gravity applies to all of them, meaning all of these people constantly are being pulled back down the ladder whether you realize it or not, which leads to the second principle is you have to pull them up. Right? So I have to, because I know that gravity applies to all of them, I have to constantly be thinking about ascension all the time. I think about how do I move somebody up the rung all the time. And that might sound exhausting, but you can build this into how you execute your calendar, how you execute your reach outs, how you do your sales process, how you do your events. All of this stuff can be baked in to understanding how this works and how you're going to interact with people. So let's start with the skeptic. So again, the skeptic is open to influence. Now, what does influence mean? Influence can be things like testimonials, right? So if you don't have testimonials on your website, you don't have Google reviews on your website, you should probably get those out. That is a form of influence. They can be open influence from their friends. This is why you should have things like Bring a Friend Week, which if you want to download that, we'll put it somewhere around this video, done for you module on how to do that. But again, if they're open to influence, let's figure out how we can influence them and how we can get them moving up. Now, the prospect is an interesting one. The prospect is, again, they have a short list. So if I want to interact with them, my goal here is to differentiate. Right? I want to differentiate how we are different from so-and-so down the street. CrossFit, not so good down the street versus CrossFit awesome. Again, going back to the importance of getting clarity so that you can speak to people appropriately. What makes us different? What makes us different is that we believe that the coach is the single most important variable in a client's success. That's a differentiating factor, right? Now there's 2 types of ways that you can differentiate. One is going to be soft differentiate, and that's an example of what I gave you. Then you can have like a hard differentiator, and there's like, hey, we have a sauna and a cold plunge and air runners and super cool, branded barbells. That's another type of differentiation. And if I know that CrossFitters like one or more of those 3 things that we talked about before, which is like they like training, they like the social events, and they like stuff, I can use those 3 pieces of information to figure out how I'm going to differentiate myself from everybody else in this space. Because the prospect is looking at a number of things. They're looking at the subjective components of your business, but they're also looking at the very objective components of the business, meaning how close or far is it from my home or my work, and how convenient is it that I'm going to be able to get there? Because a lot of people are going to make that decision solely based on that thing. It's either close to home or it's close to work. And if you want to be able to beat somebody out who is closer to home or closer to work, you're going to need to be able to differentiate in some way, shape, or form. Now, the buyer is different. And a lot of times when we're selling, we are talking to the buyer as if they are a prospect. They're ready to give us money, and we're trying to differentiate. What you need to do if somebody is a buyer is all you need to do is sell them, right? Make your offer. When somebody is in the buyer stage, they are in the value for money stage. They are ready to have a transaction, and they are ready to move forward. If you move back down and you interact with them like they are a prospect and you're trying to differentiate when somebody is a buyer, you're decreasing the likelihood of a sale because they're ready to go. If they're ready to go, just sell them. And then we can move on and we can figure out how to make him ambassador, right? And at the end of the day, if somebody's moving into the ambassador realm and I want to move them into the ambassador realm, what I have to do is delight. Okay? I need to make them happy, right? If I want somebody to sing our praises, I need to make sure that they're really, really happy. And you can do that a number of ways. And we're going to talk about some tactical ways to do that. But really understanding, most importantly, how do I interact with people inside of this 5-stage process, and understanding what are the two components that apply to absolutely all of them, right? I understand people are constantly moving up or down. Gravity applies to all of them. So I need to be ascending them, and I need to be doing that intentionally and actively all the time. And also understand that if I'm interacting with somebody inappropriately based on the stage that they're at, I'm decreasing my likelihood that they will either buy from me or that they will stay with me. Now, the one thing I didn't cover is how do we address the cynic? And fundamentally, you as the business owner cannot address the cynic. Why? Because they're a cynic, okay? They don't believe you, right? So how do I do that? The way you do this is you can send the ambassador. You can use social proof to convert the cynic, to make them into a skeptic, and then start to move them up the pipeline. And this is the value of starting to, number one, delight people so that you have an army of ambassadors that can then combat the cynics that you have. Every one cynic is worth 10 ambassadors. It's going to cost you 10 ambassadors to downplay any cynic that you have. Everybody's had like that one negative Google review on their Google review page that they worry about because some person that had a bad experience 15 years ago woke up one morning with a hair up in their ass and decided to write a bad Google review. And that's all everybody sees after that. But if I have an army of people underneath that comment underneath that, that combats that very, very well. But just thinking about how does all of this work? Where are different people in this buyer cycle? Because again, they're always buying, or they're either buying for the first time or they're going to buy the next time. Because none of them are required to stay forever. They owe us nothing as a business. I have to understand how to move them up at all times. And a lot of it has to do with understanding where they're at and how I should interact with them appropriately. All right, so if we're talking about interacting with people appropriately, I want to get into a little bit of the nitty gritty here. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about tactics. We've talked some high level concepts here, but it's important to get into the tactics. And when we're talking about this idea of retention, if we really start to unpack this is what Alex Hormozi calls a bundled term, right? Retention is this big idea of like keeping people longer, right? But that involves a lot of different things, right? A lot of different characteristics, a lot of different action steps, processes, all these things. But I want to boil it down to just two because I think simple is always better. So when we are having conversations with clients, I want them to check two boxes. The best conversations are both relevant and relative. What do I mean by that? We want to talk to people about things that are relevant to them. I don't want to talk to them about random stuff that doesn't mean anything, right? So there's a difference between sending somebody an email that says, hey, congratulations, you're 2 months into your membership here at CrossFit Rife. While it seemingly is relevant, it's really not. It doesn't mean anything. That has no real value add to them. Versus if it's relevant to them and I find out that via our coach Slack channel that they PR'd their push press and they did an in-body scan last week and they're down 4% body fat, that is relevant to them, right? They've done something for the first time and they're having positive results. Reaching out to them about those two very specific things that did not happen to anybody else in the gym makes this a different interaction and makes a better conversation. The only way I can make that better is I have it on a relative time frame. Now, what do I mean by relative time frame? I mean as close as humanly possible to the event. Now, we can't always be right there when the thing happens, whether it's they jump on the box for the first time, they get their first pull-up, whatever it might be. Okay, all of those things are happening in the gym all the time. What we want to think about is, how can I get as close as possible to the event? What is as close as possible? It's as close as possible. You can determine what success looks like for you. But let's just say that within several days, I can talk to them about something that happened to them in the gym, and I can do it rather quickly. Most of the time, depending on what the event is, it will be afterwards. But sometimes we can do it preemptively. So if there are things that we know are coming, a gym birthday, a gym anniversary, we know that a lifetime attendance metric is about to be hit. I can prep those things beforehand and I can do it on the day of the event. Versus if it's something that happens in the moment, they get a PR, they do something for the first time. I just want to have a mechanism with which to capture that information so I can follow up with them really, really quickly and be like, yo, I heard that you got your first pull-up today. That's amazing. I want to highlight you on Instagram. Like, let's do a short interview tomorrow and I want to talk about what that journey was like for you. So these are things that I want to look at because People know what automation looks like. People understand when that random email goes out, they're like, hey, happy 68th day of CrossFit. It doesn't mean anything to them. Not to say that you shouldn't have some undertone or underlying form of automation, but that shouldn't be the bulk of your retention strategy. And this leads into this larger conversation of what is the overarching strategy when I'm executing retention. If you guys haven't picked up on it, strategy is a big thing because developing strategy helps me figure out how to communicate with the team and how I push my time, energy, and resources. And this is something that I came to the realization of years ago. And it's this idea of playing offense versus playing defense. And for years and years and years, I played defense. And most affiliate owners play defense. Now, what do I mean by playing defense? I mean that we run reports and we figured out that somebody has not been in the gym for a certain number of days. Right? And now I need to figure out what is the course of action. What is the exact, verbiage of the text that I'm going to send to try to get them back into the gym? And fundamentally, all that is I'm trying to catch people from falling out of the bucket. So I'm just standing underneath the bucket and it's just raining crap sandwiches on top of me. Not my idea of a good time. So how do I shift away from this? Not to say that you're not still going to have to do that, but if I play offense, I should have less and less defense to play. And at the end of the day, every sport is predicated on who scores the most points, not necessarily who defends the best. Defense is necessary in any sport, and business is a sport. But if you can shift your focus over here to offense, and I can preemptively engage people on things that they find value in, what I will find is that the requirements inside of my defensive capabilities will drop dramatically. You'll have less and less people churning out, and you'll have less and less people churning out faster. So how do we play offense versus defense? Because defense, quite frankly, sucks. Everybody that's ever sent that email will be like, hey, haven't seen you in a while. You know what's coming after that. Hey, sorry, I've been busy. I'm going to have to cancel. It just sucks and you don't have to do that. So how do you get away from that? You have to switch modes. You need to go score points. What does scoring points look like inside of the affiliate? It means giving them what they want and giving it to them in a timely fashion. All right, so I want to give you some examples of playing offense. And again, inside of any business, there are endless metrics that you could track. We don't want to track all the metrics. We want to track the right metrics. So I could give a whole hour-long video on how I feel about data and lead versus lag metrics. But largely, what we want you guys to start shifting to are lead metrics, right? So lag metric is something that happened in the past. It's a historical piece of information. Your revenue from last month is a lag metric. I want to figure out what information can I be looking at and on what time frame can I be looking at it so that it would tell me what my monthly revenue is going to be next month or the month after that. So we want to look at lead metrics primarily. And I'm going to give you some ones that we find to be really impactful when we're going to play this game of offense. So first and foremost, we want to look at percentage of attendance, right? How many people or what percentage of my member base is attending the gym on any given weekly basis? I really, really like to track things weekly because there's nothing worse than being an affiliate owner and getting in the end of the month and you look at all your metrics and you're like, well, that sucks. We're down. Okay. What could I be looking at that would help me interact with that information or change it or do something prior to that so that I don't have to get to the end of the month and realize that we've had a bad month? Okay. And again, this is this understanding that you don't have to just lie down and take it. If you know things are happening, if I know the right information at the right time, I can start to put things in place that would help me avoid that or at the worst case scenario, mitigate it so it's not as bad. And one of the things we really tell people to track is attendance, right? Attendance is a direct correlate to your churn, right? So if people are not attending, they're inevitably going to churn out. So we look at attendance very, very closely. What we'll tell you is that less than 50% churn, you have a really big problem on your hands, right? If you're killing it, you would be probably 70% or higher, right? So be greater than that. This is happy time, right? This is you as an affiliate owner if you're doing that, right? So looking at percentage of my members attend on a weekly basis. We've seen gyms that have as high as 80% attendance on any given day, which is awesome. That's a really great problem to have. We really hope people show up with that problem because that's a fun problem to solve. The next thing we're going to look at is weekly attendance. We look at this one religiously. So we look at total gross attendance on a weekly basis. So we say how many total attendances that I have on a given basis or on a given week and say, hey, I'm going to track that week over week over week over week. So for instance, if I have 475 check-ins one week, 450 check-ins the following week, and the week after that I have 325 check-ins, something's going on there. Now, you may or may not do something with that information, meaning you may not need to change anything. Let's just say it was a holiday and you were closed for 3 days. Well, that checks out. So I don't need to do anything about that. But if we had a full week of classes, I need to look at why was attendance down by 100 people? Was it spring break? Do I need to take a look at the programming? Do I need to take a look at who's coaching those classes and is attendance down across a certain coach inside of there? Because if I know that and I see that red flag goes off, I can start to address that problem early and often. Because the number of times I've seen somebody put a new coach in the 6 a.m. because the gym owner was worn out, which I totally understand. And then 5 months later, all of a sudden they have a huge churn problem. It's because they put a coach in there and they didn't have the requisite mechanisms to figure out that there was a problem going on. And then the follow-on questions be like, what classes or what attendance metrics are we looking at? So if I know that attendance is dropping, I can start zooming in and saying, hey, why is that going on? What class attendance is dropping week over week over week? And then I maybe extract that coach out of there, or I go in and help them coach a better class. But this is why this one's really important, because it helps me get ahead of the curve. The next one we look at is PRs, right? Why? Because fundamentally we're in the impact game and PR is an indicator of results. If we're not delivering results, then what the hell are we doing? So I want to track PRs. And this gets into this larger conversation about how you utilize your programming inside of the affiliate. And I think a lot of times we've gotten away from kind of programming the hero workouts and the girl workouts or any sort of benchmark that you're going to have inside of the affiliate. And we need to be programming these strategically so that we are manufacturing results. And this is really important because part of keeping somebody satisfied is you have to show them. I have to say, look, you got a PR today. I have to remind them, because a lot of times it's really hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. And that's what a lot of your athletes feel like. They're in there, they're going through the process, the results are happening, they're just not seeing it or they're not realizing it. So if I'm taking a lot of these things off the table because we want to follow some special program that doesn't have repeats in there that allow us to highlight improvements, I think that's a massive miss. And you don't have to sacrifice programming or any of that other stuff in order to do that. It's just a thoughtful exercise that'll actually help you make your clients very, very happy. The next one we're going to look at is lifetime attendance. And this is something, lifetime attendance has a couple of different components to it. Number one is rewarding people for sticking around a long time. But I think arguably more importantly, starting to communicate things about lifetime attendance means we are now future pacing people. We're talking to people about their 100th workout when they come in on day one, and their 250 workout after they've been there for 2 months, or their 1000th workout. And there's a ton of ways that you can do this. Like you can communicate this via email. One of the things that we do really well at CrossFit Rife is we track all of this stuff. And because we know when some of these events are coming up, we'll order t-shirts, custom, that cannot be bought or anything like that. And we'll have those ready when they hit that lifetime attendance, because now what I'm doing is I'm signaling to the other people that this is a metric out in the future that you can also get, while simultaneously rewarding the person that's there and making them the hero of their own journey. And all it takes is a little bit of thoughtful exercise to map this out so that we know when they're going to get that lifetime attendance metric, so that we can go right before that. We can make sure that we have the t-shirt and the sticker on hand, and we can deliver that in front of everybody so they look amazing. So if you're not tracking lifetime attendance, you're screwing up in an immense way. Some of the best kind of fitness-based companies that do this are spin studios. Spin studios track lifetime attendance in a fantastic way. They have like socks and all sorts of great stuff. So stealing something like that from those studios is never a bad idea. The next thing we're going to be looking at is referrals. And simply just, are we getting referrals? Like, how many referrals are we getting? First thing you do if you're not getting referrals is ask why. And some people say, all my friends are at the gym. And I'm just as a mathematical equation, over a long enough time period, that's not possible, right? So I kind of highlighted it in a different video that at a 5% churn, that is a roughly 46% compounded, right? Meaning I have 5% churn every single month. That's a 46% total churn in my overall member base every single year, which means like 1 out of every 2 people is new in 12 months. So fundamentally, like knowing that, like, hey, if you're not getting referrals on a long enough time frame, it's not because all their friends are there, right? That's just statistically impossible. It means that there's something going on there. Now, hopefully, it's just that we're not asking. So how do we start asking for referrals, right? Just ask for the referral. Set up something like Bring a Friend Week, right? Ask for a referral in the sales process. These are easy asks, right? If you do them correctly, these are layups. But tracking referrals, I really love tracking referrals because it's a great indicator of whether or not we're providing good service. And I love things that are sanity checks so that we don't get romantic about our own shit. And if we're not getting referrals, this is a great indicator that we might need to dig in and figure out like why people are not delighted and why they're not referring. Because if people are delighted, they will refer all day long, and they will refer everybody, not just their friends. They'll refer random strangers. Okay. Now, last thing on there is something like Committed Club. So the whole idea when we created Committed Club is to drive the one success metric that we would want, right? Which is attendance. And what we know is that people that are there more than 12 times a month fall into a couple different categories. Number one, they're more likely to stay longer. Number two, they're more likely to get results. And number three, they're less likely to get injured, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. It's not that if you train more, you're more likely to get injured. It's actually the exact opposite. If you train more, you know your body a little bit better. The coach sees you more often, so they have a better indication of like how you're feeling that day, and they can help you navigate the scenario a little bit more. So when we created Committed Club, it was to drive the success metric for our clients and say, hey, if you get here, we're going to put you in a raffle and you're going to win something. But really what we're trying to get them to understand is like, hey, if you get here, you're now creating a really, really healthy habit that's going to get you where you want to go long term. And that's why you came here. And I don't want to sell you something that's not going to get you what you came here for. And largely, that has a lot to do with why we're not super big fans of things like limited memberships, right? We know that as the number drops below 12, results are typically not going to happen, which begs the question, if I'm selling something that's not going to get somebody results, why am I doing that? And if I'm doing it just for the money, we really need to have a conversation about that. So again, Committed Club is a really big component of this whole thing. And Committed Club, if you drive this, will lead to all of these other metrics, at which point you're driving all of the things that we know are going to keep people around for a very, very long time. Which leads me to, we'll call it a tangent. So I want to talk real quickly. I want to clarify our thoughts and our stance on punch cards, right? Like, why do punch cards make Fern sad? And I'll tell you what, it's not because I have any sort of weird relationship or just like hate punch cards. It's because when we really dig into the numbers, they provide no value to the business. So we'll give you the standard punch card kind of build out, right? So let's just say it's $150 and that gets you 10 sessions. And typical expiration date is 90 days. Okay. And when I run the math on this, what this turns out to be is over a 3-month period, this person has a $50 ACV. Okay. We also know statistically that these people are going to churn out. Right? I mean, they have a significantly higher churn rate than everybody else. They have a low ACV. And if I think about if they were going to run their 10 sessions across the 90 days, that means they're going to come in roughly every 9 days. If you're coming in to train every 9 days, you are not getting any type of results. And again, this begs the question, why am I selling something to somebody that is not going to get them results? That literally makes no sense when I'm in the impact game. So we really have to question why it is that we're doing this. And I will tell you far more often than not, the reason somebody is selling this is because they struggle inside of sales, right? They've either not deselected their clients or they're struggling inside of the sales process. They don't know how to sell. They have a weird relationship with sales, or they've just not come to the conclusion that they need to deselect people that want punch cards. I'll tell you guys a story. Years ago, I had this guy come in, and I believe he was a doctor. So let's assume that he had enough disposable income to afford a CrossFit gym membership. And he said, hey, do you guys have punch cards? I said, hey, sorry, we don't have any punch cards. We just don't sell them. He's like, oh, well, that would just really work better for my schedule. And I said, listen, I totally get it, right? Like, I totally get that will work for your schedule, but we just don't sell punch cards. And he said, yeah, I really want to join the gym, but I'm only really going to be here like, every other 2-week segment. So he's going to be gone for 2 weeks and then here for 2 weeks. And sometimes it would not even fit that schedule. It might be a little bit further. And I said, listen, man, I'm like, we don't sell punch cards. I'm not going to sell you a punch card. And it's not because I don't want you at the gym. It's because that's just not the business we're in. We're not in the business of selling people stuff that's not going to get them results. If you want to do that, you can buy a drop-in when you come in here. I'm happy to train you while you're here, but I'm not going to sell you a punch card. I just don't think it's good value to you, and it's not going to get you what you want. Now, full disclosure, that guy did not buy shit from me, right? But the point was, I was okay deselecting him because I already knew what was going to happen there. I knew that this guy was going to be back and forth, and then he was going to later on ask me that he didn't use all his punches on his punch card, so could he get a refund or could he roll those over? We've all lived that nightmare. And I was further along in my affiliate owner journey that I knew better. And I was like, hey, number one, I'm glad I don't sell it, right? Because most people are coming to me and they're like, well, people are buying the punch card. And I'm like, it's on the menu. Take it off the menu. If it's on the menu, people will buy it. So first thing with regard to punch cards is understand why they're bad for you. Fundamentally, from a financials and from a data standpoint, they ruin everything, right? They ruin ACV, they ruin your retention rates, they ruin your lifetime gross profit. It's just not a good offer for you to take inside of the gym. Just sell them a drop-in. But ultimately, they're also, in most instances, I'm not talking about the unicorns that are like your favorite people that do drop-ins. Those are anomalies. Most people should be deselected. So stop selling them something that's not going to get results because they want you to make a special package for them. So rant ended on punch cards. Okay, so I've given you all the metrics that I think you guys should track. And if you're dealing with some of the other software companies in the space, Wodify, PushPress, we've helped them build a lot of these workflows into their system because we feel it's really important to have that stuff readily available for you guys so that you can track lifetime attendance, PRs, birthdays, anniversaries, and all that stuff. And then again, really what we're trying to help you guys build, we'll do a whole nother separate video on this, which is just like understanding this idea of like, what are the most important metrics? You don't want to track everything, right? Again, there's endless number of metrics that you can track inside of affiliate. I want to track the most important things. The most important things center around attendance because we know that is a causative mechanism for high retention. Now, how would I find those metrics? And then how would I get them pushed to me so that I know them beforehand so that I can play this game of offense? Listen, at the end of the day, all I want you guys to do is run the best possible CrossFit affiliates that you possibly can. I want you guys to have as many members as you can. I want you to love the members. I want you to grow a thriving community. I want you to be able to pay people full-time wages. And I want you to sail off into the sunset on your sailboat called CrossFit Awesome Boat, whatever that's going to look like for you. I don't care. But the point is, I want you guys to be successful in this endeavor. So I'm trying to give you guys as much information as humanly possible so that you can do that. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing is changing lives. And inside that whole endeavor of changing lives, you deserve to be rewarded for that because that is not an easy endeavor. So if that's something that you want, please take this information and please use it, right? There's no point in just consuming this information and then never doing anything with it. Like I want you to take this stuff and I want you to execute it. And if you struggle executing it, reach out to us and we can help you implement those things a little bit faster. We would love to do it. We've worked with over 1,000 affiliates over the past 4 years and we're going to work with thousands more in the future. So if that's something you're interested, click the link somewhere around this video and we would be happy to set up a call with you. Outside of that, I hope this helps. Understand the retention is the name of the game. That's going to get you where you want to go. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. We appreciate you listening and choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. You can find more episodes just like this on all podcast platforms. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community. Thanks for listening.